You're sitting by a fire. It's roughly 50,000 years ago. There's no Netflix, no phone buzzing in your pocket, no quiet panic about an inbox you haven't checked. There's just you, the flames, aliens, and a thick curl of smoke drifting straight into your face. And at some point, one of your ancestors sat in that exact spot, breathing that exact smoke, and had a thought that would echo for the rest of human history. What if I did that on purpose? This is the story of when humans started smoking, not cigarettes. Not the guy outside your office building who somehow always wants to talk for 15 minutes. We're talking about the first time a human being intentionally inhaled something burning, and why that moment might be a lot older than you think. Here's the part that surprises most people. Smoking does not start with tobacco. It does not start with trade routes or ceremonies or even farming. The actual desire to breathe in smoke on purpose might be wired into us at a level so deep it predates civilization completely. To understand why, you have to start with fire itself, because before anyone can smoke anything, they need something burning, and fire has been part of the human story for an extremely long time. The oldest solid evidence of controlled fire use comes from a site called Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, dating back roughly 1 million years. Archaeologists found burned plant ash and charred bone deep inside the cave, not scattered the way a wildfire would leave it, but concentrated, the kind of pattern you get from a fire someone built and tended on purpose. 1 million years ago, that someone wasn't even a modern human. That was Homo erectus, an earlier human relative with a smaller brain and a much heavier brow, sitting around a fire just like we still do today. They cooked with it, they stayed warm with it, and every single day for hundreds of thousands of years, they breathed in smoke from it. It was unavoidable. It was constant. It was basically the original air quality problem, except nobody had an app telling them to stay inside. And that's where things get interesting, because not all of that smoke was just ordinary wood smoke. When you burn plants, you don't just get smoke and ash. You get a chemical cocktail that depends entirely on what's burning. Some plants release compounds that interact directly with the human brain, and it turns out our brains came pre-installed with the hardware to notice. The human body has something called the endocannabinoid system, a network of receptors that helps regulate mood, memory, and appetite. These receptors did not evolve because of any specific plant. They were already there. So when an early human first breathed in smoke from a burning plant containing the right compounds, their brain wasn't confused. It responded like it had been waiting for exactly that signal. That single accidental moment, somewhere around a prehistoric fire, may be the real starting point of smoking. Not a decision, not a plan, just a pleasant accident that kept happening until someone thought to make it happen on purpose. Now, here's where we have to slow down, because there's a difference between humans accidentally smoking something and humans deliberately growing or seeking it out. The oldest solid evidence we have for intentional drug use through smoke comes from the Pamir Mountains in Central Asia, where archaeologists found wooden burners in a burial site dating back to around 500 BC. Inside those burners were heated stones and residue from cannabis plants with unusually high potency, not wild hemp used for rope or fabric. This was selected for its effect, and it was placed in a grave on purpose. But does that mean 500 BC is really when this started? Almost certainly not. Organic material like dried leaves or wooden pipes rarely survives more than a few centuries in the ground. We find stone tools from millions of years ago because stone barely decays. Smoke and ash and dried plant matter vanish. So the lack of older physical proof doesn't mean it didn't happen. It just means the evidence rotted away long before anyone showed up to dig for it. There's also the Herodotus problem. The ancient Greek historian wrote about a nomadic people called the Scythians who built small enclosed tents, heated stones inside them, and threw hemp seeds onto those stones, then sat inside breathing the smoke, which he described as making them howl with pleasure. For centuries, people assumed Herodotus was exaggerating. Then archaeologists started digging up Scythian burial sites and finding the exact same setup. Heated stones, bronze containers, hemp residue. He wasn't making it up. If anything, he undersold it. Now let's zoom out, because this pattern is not just an old world story. On the other side of the planet, something similar was happening with a completely different plant. Tobacco is native to the Americas, and it was completely unknown anywhere else in the world until European explorers reached the Caribbean in the late 1400s. When Columbus's crew landed, they were baffled to see people walking around with small, glowing rolled leaves, breathing out smoke through their mouths and noses. Within weeks, his own sailors were trying it themselves, because of course they were. But tobacco use in the Americas goes back much further than that first contact. Chemical residue from tobacco has been found in pipes dating back at least 3,500 years in what is now the southeastern United States, and some researchers believe the practice may stretch back even further, tied to early plant cultivation in the Amazon basin. Here's the part that really matters though. For most of that history, smoking wasn't casual, it was sacred. Tobacco was used in healing ceremonies, in communication with the spirit world, in sealing agreements between groups of people. Blowing smoke towards someone was an act of respect, almost like a blessing. The smoke itself was treated as a kind of messenger, something that carried a prayer upward and brought a kind of vision back down. When something is treated that way, you don't rush it. You don't do it absent-mindedly. You do it with care. This is where a bigger idea comes in, one taken seriously by real anthropologists. Some researchers argue that the drive to alter your own consciousness isn't just a human habit. It's closer to a basic biological drive similar to hunger or thirst. And the evidence isn't only human. Elephants have been observed deliberately seeking out fermented fruit. Reindeer in Siberia eat a certain hallucinogenic mushroom, and other reindeer have been seen drinking the urine of the ones who ate it first, because the active compounds pass through still active. Yes, reindeer have figured out recreational drug recycling, and that is a true sentence you just heard. If the drive to change your own mental state runs that deep across species, it makes sense that early humans, long before they had pipes or pottery or any tools we associate with smoking, were already paying attention to which smoke made them feel good and which one nearly killed them. That knowledge didn't come from books. It came from trial and error, passed down by word of mouth around fires, in the dark for generations. So what happened to all of this once it reached the modern world? That's where the story takes a darker turn. When tobacco arrived in Europe in the 1500s, it spread fast, the kind of fast that should sound familiar to anyone watching trends move today. Within a few decades, it went from a strange import to a continental obsession. By the 1700s, snuff was fashionable among European aristocrats. By the 1800s, cigars were everywhere. By the early 1900s, the machine-rolled cigarette had been invented, making smoking cheaper, faster, and far more addictive than anything that came before it. What had taken indigenous communities thousands of years to shape into something careful and ritualized was turned into a mass-produced consumer product in just a few centuries. And the tobacco industry that grew out of that didn't stop there. Throughout the 20th century, companies spent decades hiding internal research that linked cigarettes to cancer, while marketing those same cigarettes directly at teenagers. A shaman placing cannabis on heated stones in a burial ceremony, and an executive signing off on a cigarette ad campaign both technically worked with smoke. Almost nothing else about them is the same. So when did ancient humans actually start smoking? Honestly, we don't know the exact moment, and we probably never will. The physical evidence takes us back roughly 12,000 years, real confidence, to a hearth in Utah containing wild tobacco seeds that appear to have been placed there on purpose. But the underlying behavior, the urge to alter your own mind, to gather around something burning and breathe it in together, is almost certainly far older than any artifact we've ever dug up. It might be as old as fire itself. That's not a story about addiction. That's a story about curiosity, about a creature smart enough to notice cause and effect, smart enough to think, last time that happened, I felt different, let me try that again. So picture that same fire one more time. 50,000 years ago, the smoke curling upward into the dark. Somebody sitting there, watching it rise, paying attention to it for the first time in a way that mattered. The next time you catch a whiff of smoke from a summer bonfire, or watch it drift up into the night sky, you're noticing something humans have been noticing for longer than recorded history exists. You're not doing anything new, you're just doing what we've always done.